It is so fundamental and yet so simple.
When you employ this, all of a sudden you're the one that becomes more and more interesting.
Did you push record?
Thank you so much for joining us today on Second Act TV. I'm so happy to once again welcome back motivational coach and life strategist, Joni Caldwell Lerner. Joni, thanks so much for joining me again.
Oh, thank you. I always love being here. And I have to tell you, even if we only inspire each other, I feel like it's a good thing, that's a day well lived. So thank you for having me.
Well, you inspire me all the time, and I hope that we're going to inspire lots more people with what we're going to talk about today. I love the topic, a great topic, a highly Googled search term. I found out how to be more interesting. People search for this, but they don't admit to it. I find that interesting. Pardon the
Definitely.
pun. It really makes a lot of sense, especially as we're starting over after 50 for out dating. I mean, really in any part of our life, if in our job or career, whatever, how can we be more interesting? Is there a secret to that? Kind of. I mean, there certainly is a strategy to it, and that's what we want to talk about today. The first being to be interesting. You have to be interested.
Yeah, that's really critical. I mean, human beings are pretty much self-centered. That's just you. We each are the center of our universe. And I don't know, everybody's raised differently and given different tools. I was pretty much raised by wolves. And so I would look at people and I think, how do they do that? How do they put their hand out? How are they working the room? How does that happen? And so I began to study it. And you know me, I studied human behavior for decades now. It is so fundamental and yet so simple. Be interested in the person, ask questions. Because if you want to be liked or you want to be felt as interesting, then if you're the one asking the questions, somehow they think you're fascinating.
Exactly. So, that's the point. Like, how do you show interest in other people, which is the key thing?
Okay, there are a couple of things here. So in answer to your question, how? Well, look them in the eye. Put your phone, and we've talked about this before, put your phone in your purse or your pocket. Have that person be the only person in the room. Whether or not you like Bill Clinton's politics or not, he was somebody where you were the only human being in the entire universe in the moment he was standing in front of you. Try that with people. People want to be seen. They want to be heard. And asking questions, now this is leading into what you were saying, asking questions, not yes and no questions, but interesting questions. Make people think, make people pause, make people think, wow, that person really wants to know something about me. And then here's here's a key. Stop after about 20 seconds and then come back. Now I'm going to go do it, right? So go ahead and you talk.
Well, it's asking the why. This is a good way to remember it. Is don't ask what questions, ask why questions, and get to the deeper point of where somebody, well, one, they think you're really interested in what they have to say, and you get a better answer that you can then build on and really make the person feel like they're being heard. And that makes you more interesting. It draws people to you.
Well, and think about it. If someone asks you this question, how do you make your life interesting? That is a how question, but it is an interesting question. And they'll have to stop and think, wow, how do I make my life interesting? How do I challenge myself? How do you challenge yourself? Another example of an interesting question is, rather than say, what do you do for a living? Say, why did you choose your career? What drew you to what you're doing now in the world? That's a much more interesting and layered question.
Really, that's a good thing to remember is not what, but why. Then you get underneath what is going underneath. You make somebody think about what it is you're asking, and you engage them. They believe that you are interested in them, and you should be. I mean, this all should be genuine. It's not just a formula. But when you employ this, all of a sudden you're the one that becomes more and more interesting.
Well, and you can even say that. So what makes life interesting to you?
Right, exactly. And and so if you're on a date, or if you're meeting somebody one on one, some of the topics we threw out there are great ways to engage in conversation. But even just if you're in a group or in a crowd, or at an event where you're trying to mingle and meet people, or giving somebody a compliment or commenting on something. Wow, what an interesting piece of jewelry. Show interest in the person about something that they feel comfortable talking about. For me, that's a really easy way to engage people. What do you think?
Absolutely. And you could say, great tie. Where did you get that?
Yeah.
we want to include both sides of the story. But you can start off with those things. But I would shy away from physical appearance comments, and I would go with, wow, what an extraordinary purple. Where is that your favorite color? Or anything like that. But to begin the conversation, something somebody told me years and years and years ago, 25 or 30 years ago. I said, God, I don't want to go to the wedding. I just, what is it you hate about the wedding? Well, I'm an introvert. I don't know. I'm somewhere in the middle, but I tend to be shy, and I always have been. I wouldn't even roll down the window to ask for directions in a blizzard. I couldn't do it. So she said to me, well, so you're uncomfortable going because of the social aspect. Yes. Okay. So I want you to look around and find the most uncomfortable person in the room. And I want you to go up to that person and say, hi, I'm Joni. Who do you know here? Or whatever the question is, but actually put my hand, and then you bring that person into another group of people and say, George was just telling me that he rock climbs. And then George can go, yeah, I rock climb. And so there's a generosity of spirit. There's a positivity to that. And that's a whole nother subject. But did I answer your question?
Well, you brought up two really, really good points. One is that in order to be interesting, or the characteristics, if you will, of somebody who's interesting aren't necessarily the characteristics of an extrovert. They're very much an introvert. It's listening. It's not boasting about yourself. There is nothing more boring than listening to somebody talk about his or her accolades. I mean, just boring.
You just reminded me. I went to a very intimate, lovely wedding recently. And the couple across from us, it was fascinating because my partner and I were sitting there, and he told us how much he paid for the building, how much money it cost to do this, how he had this kind of car, how he had several of these kinds of cars. My mind was blown. He couldn't hear what he sounded like. Because of my training, I know where that was coming from. Mm-hmm. He felt awkward. There's something about who he is and how he was raised that he doesn't feel like he's enough. And so he's got to list all these things that he thinks people are going to think that he matters. Yeah. And the truth is, I don't care about that. I be your authentic self. And that goes back to if you're authentically listening, if you are authentically caring, if you are authentically present.
Yeah, I mean, we've all been there to where somebody just doesn't shut up about themselves, and they just don't realize that they're making, with every word, they're becoming more and more uninteresting. And again, you brought up a great point, is make others feel important. If you can make others feel important, you're the one that becomes more interesting. So just remember that. The other one here, this is a good tip. Be able to tell good stories, especially as it relates to, human behavior. People love to talk about other people. Now, not in a cliquey or, gossipy way, but just fun stories.
Absolutely. And in fact, I also do a lot of executive leadership work. And we had this extraordinary workshop presentation, and he talked about how right off the bat, when you're in front of an audience, you connect with them on that level by telling a story. It may have nothing to do, it may seem like it has nothing to do with whatever the topic is, and then you wrap it around and bring it back. Because now what you've done is you've connected with your audience. So take that down to one-on-one. How do you connect with your audience?
Well, you brought up another good point, which is say something that is unexpected. And I should say one other thing about storytelling. Be very cognizant of how long you talk there too. A good story doesn't need to be very, very long. And if you can, again, if you can include others in this, or laugh, or has this happened to you, or whatever, that makes a story even better if people can all of a sudden be a part of it. And I love this point of do the unexpected. Doing the unexpected will be remembered. Nobody remembers a generic, conversation, especially, talking about something embarrassing about yourself, appropriately so, but something that can make, and this is a key too, make people laugh. If you can make them laugh, you will be memorable, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't have to be self-deprecating.
Mm-hmm.
I often make the joke about my forehead is more of a 5 head because it's just gigantic, and it's one of the reasons I wear bangs. It's true though. And so I actually want to pull this back and say something about what you said a second ago. Read the room.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying don't make your story too long. Read the room. If they start to check out or they don't find it interesting, you wind it up really fast or segue off somewhere else.
Yeah. The other is, and this makes so much sense, it's use your body. And by that, we mean be expressive. Use your hands, stand up straight, just, the expressions on your face. I mean, you can be interesting without anybody listening to what you're saying, just by your presence. Talk to me about that.
Well, if I'm in the corner, like, that's not very, we probably just lost some viewers. Come back.
You're too funny. We are starting to come to the end of this segment. There's actually, to your point, we came across 3 really great tips that you consciously think about that will make you interesting and irresistible. And the first one is talk with hand gestures, Joni.
Yes. And the research that we're talking about actually had to do with research on TED Talks and how they came out and they said, I have a big idea. And the TED Talks that got over 20 million views, as opposed to the exact same topic that got 5,000 views, it was the body language that made all the difference.
Vocal charisma.
Yes. Yes, you have vocal charisma. In other words, you modulate your voice. You're not sitting there going, so anyway, I really love mountain climbing, and I don't know why I keep using that same example today. And I mean, I would be gone. I'd be
Yeah, you want to talk with energy, with enthusiasm. Yeah. And I know if that doesn't come natural, that can seem a little daunting, but honestly, it's something, just practice it in a comfortable setting. And I know for, being on video, being in the media, doing interviews, having been around this all my life, I see how people talk, how they somewhat, it does become a more exaggerated delivery, but after a while, it comes natural, and it just makes you seem a lot more interesting. And then the last one, and always just remember this is, and I say this a lot, smile. And just think about having a smile on your face as you're listening. And I see this all the time because I edit an interview. And when people are listening to me as I'm asking a question, or if I'm talking, they'll, and they're listening, they're just listening.
Yeah.
But I can't cut to them then because they look like uninterested, even though they're not. So I often tell people, just You'll see me sitting there if I'm listening to you, you know.
My mother once said to me, "You need to get a sense of humor." And I said, "Mother, I'm very funny. People think I'm very funny." She goes, "You see, you need to lighten up." And so I started smiling more and really enjoying life more. There was something you said, going back to being interesting. Find yourself interesting. Just believe people are going to find you interesting. Because I'll tell you, when after my divorce, I didn't I really didn't know who I was, or was I interesting, or is I had no idea, and I had to go out in the world and figure it all out.
I love that. And I want to build on that. Just one before we close here is that everybody has an interesting story. We all do, and some people have a talent for drawing that out. I was accused of being Yule Hauser the other day, but there, I mean, you can move in and ask questions about people that makes them feel so special. It's actually kind of fun to do. It's a fun experiment. So we've kind of gone all over the board here, Joni. I think this is a passionate topic for me because I think it is. If you can make people feel good, it only helps you as well. That's the point really I want to leave. How do you want to close?
I do want to say this, is that your style may be very sweet and quiet, whether you're a man or a woman. You may be very introverted, or you may be very soft-spoken, but you can still be interested and interesting. You can still be fascinated and fascinating. You don't have to look like any particular person or act like any particular person. And we had a comment once, Silka, and it's like, well, yeah, you guys, blah, blah, blah. Well, we weren't always doing what we're doing, or confident in the same way. Maybe you were, Silka, actually, come to think of it.
You know what? And let's close on this. It's not about you showing that you're interesting. It's you showing that you're interested. That's the key. And however energy, whatever you bring to that, that will make it work for you and make you the most interesting person in the room. And on that, Joni, thank you so much for joining me again. We'll link to all your information, of course, and we'll see you next time on Second Act TV.
All right. See you then.
If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. The button is right here. Just click on through to YouTube, and when you see the little bell right next to the subscribe button, hit that too, and we'll notify you every time we launch a new video. See you next time.